Okay, students, for our first assignment this week in the class, we are going to start talking about contour drawing. And before I begin, I just want to tell you a little bit about what contour drawing is and what it's used for. So, a lot of people believe that when you begin drawing, that you need to have some sort of, I don't know, inherent talent. That there are people that are just good at it, and then there are people that are not. And this simply isn't true. The truth is, if you can learn to write your name, if you can, learn how to write letters, you can learn to draw. The trouble is there's some mindsets, some tricks that you have to kind of overcome. Some people are just naturally gifted with the ability to do these things, and other people need to be taught. But that being said, I'm here to teach you, and once you learn some of these tricks, drawing becomes much easier. So one of the most fundamentals is contour drawing. And that is where you coordinate a sense of sight with a sense of touch. To illustrate, I have my little toy Volkswagen bus here. And as you can see, this thing is covered in texture. There's little ridges that follow along the roof, between each window, all along here, this window, down the side of the door. There's all these little textures that your eye can travel upon because they're perceived ridges, types of texture. Everything has it. Here we have a piece of, I don't know, what is this? Berry briar. Your eye could travel along the ridges of the stem. Each thorn can travel up this stem, go around and up and down the ridges of this thorn. It can go down the leaf, follow each vein, back and forth, all over the place. Contour drawing is a way of really slowing yourself down and focusing how you look at things. It makes you look closer. And oftentimes when, there's a lot of people that learn to draw from books and sort of things, and they put a lot of emphasis on sort of creating these structures and a mechanical way of drawing. Some of those drawings really lack feeling. There isn't that coordinated sense of touch that you can see in better works of art. So even if you've drawn before, or if you're even aware of this concept, it's a good idea to get into practice and being able to isolate and understand how this principle works and how it benefits your drawing. A good way to think of it is basically your brain is lazy. That's right, I'm not going to lie. And I'm sure you've all heard of sort of right brain, left brain modes of thinking. So we have right brain over here and left brain over here. Sort of got it backwards, but it doesn't matter. Your left brain tends to take over. It tries to create shortcuts and more efficient ways of dealing with life. For example, we come up with language, we come up with mathematical symbols, we come up with things that sort of create a shorthand version of what it is in front of us. The right brain takes in more generalized sensory data like smell and sight and all these things, and tries to take it in its entirety, but it's almost too much information to process. So the left brain tends to take over. And what happens is, at an early age, when kids start to draw, they tend to start discovering little left-brained shortcuts. And a good example of this is the first time that maybe someone draws a face, they start to realize, the face is pretty much kind of a oval shape. The eyes are kind of like almonds. Maybe there's a beak for a nose. And, a line that sort of goes like this looks good enough for a mouth. Now, the truth is, as symbols go, that is a pretty good representation of a face. But the truth is, nobody's nose actually looks like this little wedge. or not every single eye looks exactly like the same triangle, or sorry, almond shape. But we have a tendency to create these symbols in our brain, and we use them as shortcuts in drawing rather than really looking. So what we're going to try to do is slow ourselves down and really tap into the right brain. And that's where we throw this information out the door, just get rid of it completely, and focus on true seeing. So to begin with, I'd like to do some exercises. This will take us about a half hour. It'll take you about a half hour. And I'll even have you time it. So it's probably a good idea to get your phone ready or whatever kind of timing device you have and set it for 5 minutes. And then you need to go outside and collect yourself some interesting little bits of, I don't know, flora and fauna. Organic things seem to work really good. You can use mechanical shaped objects, but they don't always look as good. These things really benefit from the quality of contouring. And even though this is just a very simple piece of bark, if you look closely, there are all kinds of crazy, interesting little ridges that travel all over this. You could spend hours trying to draw this if you wanted to. If you could really slow yourself down to the sort of mentality of what this is about, it can honestly take you a very long time, all zen, just drawing this one little piece of bark. Another good option would be some kind of plant life or something like that. And your hand. Your hand actually will be a good model for us. You can pose it in a certain way and use it as one of your exercises. One last thing about contouring, just as a kind of a guide to get you in the right mindset, it's a very slow way of drawing. Typically, you fly through life like you would in an airplane, just cruising over the landscape, and you're taking in a lot of information at once, but you're not stopping to look at the small details. Contour drawing is like you're hiking over a mountain very slowly, enjoying every little piece of grass, looking and stumbling on every little rock. It's a much, much slower and observed type of working. All right, so for the first one, we're going to do what is called a blind contour. And that is when, let's see, which one do I want to draw? That is when you place your pencil on the page and pick a spot somewhere on the subject. It doesn't matter where, but stare at it until you've nearly convinced yourself that your pencil is touching the same spot you're looking at as it is on the paper. And once you've gotten yourself into that sort of scientific recording device mode, where you really, really got that sorted out, I want your eye to travel at a slow and consistent rate of speed over all the information that you can see. The more you see, the better it's going to look. Now, the trick to the blind contour, though, is that you do not look at the actual drawing. You only look at this. Don't worry if your drawing is going to look weird. Just go ahead, trust that when you move your eye and start traveling, at a slow and consistent rate of speed, never lifting your pencil, just keeping it on the page, you're gonna come up with what is referred to by other artists as a felt drawing. You can really feel that the artist was looking at all the information. Don't worry in which path your eye travels. You can just suddenly start traveling across the leaf, on some vein, and you're not really concerned with proportion or the outcome of the drawing itself. Again, this is an exercise, and you're training yourself to look more closely. Voila. Look at that. Masterpiece. Just kidding. Point is, it doesn't matter what this part looks like. The point is that when you look closely at it, you see that each one of these marks, each way that the line travels, feels like the texture of this. It really captures the essence of that part of the form. Now, regardless of whether it's, it's the right proportion or if the lines meet up, all that doesn't really matter for the blind contour. The blind contour is you're just training yourself to get into that mode. Okay, so you'll want to do one of those for a blind contour for 5 minutes of one object. Now you can go and do the same object a second time, but this time, using the same strategies, allow yourself to look at the drawing occasionally, just to make sure you're in the right spot. 90% of the time, you should be observing here. You shouldn't be sketching, you shouldn't be drawing, people that have drawn before are always tempted to jump ahead and start doing different steps. Remember, we're really decanting the beginning steps of drawing into very specific types. And so to understand contour, you can't jump ahead. You need to keep your pencil on the page, allow it to move at a consistent rate of speed. But this time, every so often, just look back at your drawing to make sure that everything's going in the right place. But not too much. Remember, all the information is here. All the information that's going to make your drawing good will be here. You're only looking here a little bit of the time to make sure things are in the right spot. And trust in the process. Right now I'm getting a little bit stuck up on the outside contours, or what would be referred to as the silhouette. But I'll be sure to make myself go back over certain areas so I can capture, let's say, the veins of the leaves. Etc. And then you just continue this process until this piece is finished. Okay? And so you'll want to do that. So a regular contour for another 5 minutes. Now pick a different subject matter. Your hand works really well, like as I said before. My suggestion, don't just lay it flat on the page like this. That's too similar to that symbolic sort of turkey that you made in kindergarten. Don't be tempted to do that. It's not going to help you. Instead, pose it in a more interesting way. Some way that you're not normally looking at it, and it'll force you to look harder and give you a better drawing. So now what I'm going to do is, perhaps follow around the outside contours, but whenever I find, any kind of wrinkle or fold or crease, I can travel back and forth. Anything that your eye perceives as a ridge around the fingernail, the cuticle, back and forth across, again, the knuckles and the follicles, anything that you can see. is fair game, and try to record as much information as possible. If you're doing this correctly, you're going to find that 5 minutes is not going to feel like enough. You'll realize that you're seeing more than you can possibly get down. But that's good. That's good because you're training yourself to learn to slow down. That's exactly what you want to do. So after you've done several of these, I want you to do 3 blinds, 3 different objects, and 3 regular contour drawings of the same objects. Put that aside and you'll turn that in also with the long project that you're going to be working on. For your long project, maybe give yourself a short break and get yourself reset up. I recommend, if you can, if you have a drawing board, maybe clip the paper to a drawing board. Okay, and set it up probably in your lap or something like this. We'll talk about different ways of setting up like sort of an easel-like situation using a chair or whatever. But for now, set it up like this or sideways so that you have a rigid background. If not, you can just set up your drawing pad like this too, but it really helps to have your drawing at a different angle than flat. Flat only works when you're doing very small work, but when you're working on this larger 18 by 24 inch paper, it really pays to have it up. Now, that being said, there's another little thing that I want to say before we talk about the subject matter, is the size of your drawing. In this class, we're working on this large 18 by 24 inch paper. So I'm just going to have you pretend for a minute that this small sheet, just so it fits in the camera, is your 18 by 24 inch paper. And let's talk about composition. You want to fill 80% of the page or more. Most likely when you get your subject matter set up, in this case we're going to be drawing our shoes, you might go ahead and, forgive me, I'm going to sketch here because it's faster. You might draw your shoes about this big, which isn't terrible. It does fill up a good amount of the space. Okay, so just a sketchy version of my shoes. How they're, from my point of view. But if I were you, really try to push the boundary so that it's taking up even more. Just like try to make it fill up 80% of the page or more if you possibly can. We'll talk about that more, but it's the habit I want you to get into right away, because especially as drawings progress, I'm going to start taking that into account, how much of the page you're actually considering and filling up. If you're just doing little tiny drawings that only fill up a tiny bit of the space, it's a waste of paper for one, and it doesn't make a very good visual impact. All right, so for our long drawing, you're going to draw your shoes. I want you to set them up in sort of an interesting way. Don't just put them flat facing you like this, like you would see them in the store shelves, because that's not interesting enough. Additionally, be sure you pick a pair of shoes that have a lot of character. I don't know if you can see these, but they are messed up. There's a hole in there. There's lots of wrinkles. They've seen the river. They've been all over the place. So, get some shoes that have a lot of interesting detail, because each one of these little folds and wrinkles adds character. And those are going to be things that your pencil are going to be able to travel along when you're doing this assignment. I'm going to go ahead and leave my paper flat just so that you can see everything. But you're going to use the same sort of techniques that you learned, some beach sand, same sort of techniques that you used for drawing your warm-ups, the contour warm-ups. You're just going to go ahead and do it on a much larger scale following along all the character and ridges of your shoe. So we're talking like every seam, every stitch, every part of leather, details, crummy little holes, wrinkles, anything that becomes part of a ridge that your pencil could follow along and touch physically. Pretend your eye is touching it and let your pencil record it on the page. Now this is a contour, so you don't have to be totally blind to what's going on. You go ahead and check your drawing from time to time, but remember, this is something that you got to get into your head. 90% of the information that you need for a good drawing is in the subject matter itself. You do not need to keep referring to the drawing to make a good drawing. You need to refer to this. All right, so your assignment, spend about an hour and a half to 2 hours drawing both of your shoes. Make sure you have two. Make sure they have their shoes with a lot of character. Don't pick, your most basic sandals, because honestly, that's not going to teach you much, and it's going to make for kind of a silly drawing. Give yourself a bit of a challenge. And then when you're all finished, be sure you embed both this and your warm-ups, the one with the 6 smaller drawings, into the discussion forum for the week. Let's see, anything else? I am going to be holding, my plan is to be holding a couple of Zoom check-in meetings, hour-long during the week. That one will happen sort of in the middle of the day, one more in the afternoon, that I'm hoping that everyone is going to be able to pop into at some point. It would be a great opportunity for you to draw. I mean, you could draw with the teacher present. That way, if you have any questions as you're working, you can speak to me about it and get some immediate feedback. Or if you just come across questions as you go, or come across things that are bothering you, you can raise those concerns during the Zoom meeting. Oh yeah, and the pencil that you want to use for this, go ahead and use one of your graphite pencils, something that's above 3B, 4B, something like that. That's my recommendation, and good. All right, good luck, and talk to you soon. Thank you.